on the show today we have a very special guest, Aryeh Myers, all the way from, where are you, sir? You're in a small room, I'm guessing Connecticut.
It's a small room, not quite in Connecticut, in a town or a city called Modi'in in central Israel.
Oh, okay. Oh,
that was going to be my third guess.
All I had to do was look behind me here.
Yeah, there you go.
It says where he is. So you are 10 hours ahead of us, so you're enjoying your evening there. And
Yep.
Usually on WYE we enjoy a frosty beverage with our guests. However, it's early, so we're having coffee.
I've got water.
I'm going to arrange a coffee very soon. I'm actually on my way to a night shift. So.
Oh dear Lord!
Wonderful.
Well, we should stop yammering away
I've got ages.
get to the interview then.
We should. So,
Ages.
Aryeh, I wanted to have you on the show because we've been Facebook friends for a long time now, probably from the Chronicles days. And you
Yep.
shared something a little while ago, a couple weeks ago, about running a call. You're a paramedic there. You were doing a CPR case, a resuscitation, and pardon my terminology, the air raid sirens went off.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing to call it. They call it a red alert here.
Mm-hmm.
We were in the midst of the latest round of escalation, mini war, whatever you want to call it, in this part of the world. And yeah, we were in the middle of CPR on a 35-ish-year-old gentleman. And in the midst of it all, the air raid sirens went off. We were on 10th or 11th floor of a building. And it was a new building, and all buildings in Israel, every apartment has its own secure room, its own safe room.
Wow.
So like reinforced concrete, reinforced steel doors. So luckily we had that actually in the apartment.
So did you just drag old boy into the safe room and hope for the best?
I'd like to say that I was that kind, but what we actually did was we were in a region that we had 60 seconds from the siren going off to any potential missile hit. So we used those 60 seconds to attach an automatic resuscitator. So we used the Lucas machine here, attached that to the patient,
The thumper.
ran into the safe room, and came back when it was safe again.
So I have a question. So you're on the 10th or 11th floor of this building, is that correct?
Right.
So if a rocket hits the 3rd floor and the building comes a-tumbling down, is that safe room going to do any good at all?
In theory, it should. The way the buildings are built here is that all the safe rooms are one on top of the other. So you've got this tower of safe rooms.
Okay.
So
hopefully
there is some level of safety. Whether it is the best place to be at that time, probably not. But
yeah, 60 seconds, not a whole heck of a lot of time.
Not a lot of
it's
time
not a lot of time.
Not a lot of time to put a plan together and put it into effect. Now, so you did that. How long was it until you were able to get back to quote-unquote normal patient care?
So the theory is that once you've heard the sirens go off, you're supposed to remain in the safe room for 10 minutes in case there's any missile debris or anything such like that might still land. But we waited until we heard the missile defense system kicking in. So there's what's known as the Iron Dome. So we heard the missile defense system take out this missile, waited another minute or so, and then went back into the room to continue further patient care.
It sounds that sounds crazy to me, but my mind, being the twisted individual that I am, you said Iron Dome, and I immediately start making Game of Thrones references to the Iron Throne.
I was thinking
I can't
more
help
like
it. I'm sorry.
Stephen King, The Dome.
Yeah, sure. So explain to us what is the Iron Dome? It sounds strong, I guess.
Right. So the Iron Dome is a missile defense system used against rocket attacks that are fired, or against rockets that are fired into Israel. Has a very, very, very high success rate, thankfully, sort of in the 90%. Takes out any or most of the missiles that come flying towards us.
So this building construction, this manner of response, is this consistent throughout your region, or just in certain neighborhoods, certain times of the year? Can you anticipate this kind of stuff?
Can't really anticipate it. We have sometimes frequent, sometimes infrequent rounds of for want of a better term, violence that occur between Israel and Hamas or whoever it is on the Gazan side of the border. we can't always anticipate it. Sometimes we know things are heating up a little bit. Then there's a level of alert that comes in to all the emergency services. Obviously, we're included in that. So we knew it was happening. We knew we were in the middle of one of these escalations. So we have flak jackets, bulletproof helmets, all sorts of things in the ambulances. But when you're on the 10th floor and not expecting it, then it's kind of fairly useless equipment.
Yeah, so you mentioned
There's
that sometimes you get this heads up or you get an alert. Does that change your response patterns at all? Are you sending less cars out to calls? And what happens on the fire and law enforcement side when these alarms go off?
I can tell you what happens on our side. If we are on the way to a call, then we try to find some shelter. If we are actually with our patient, then again, we need to find some level of protection for us and for our patient. It changes the response a little. If the alert occurs when we're sitting on the ambulance station, then we have to go into the safe room there and in theory, again, wait for clearance. It's just a slightly higher level of alert, but it's kind of business as usual. It means going out in flak jackets and helmets, but we're still out there helping the public.
So in this incident that you had a few weeks ago that you posted about, and you said you hooked him up to the Lucas machine, is that what you called it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the automatic just thumper thing, right? It looks.
That's it.
I think
Yep.
that our local agency uses something similar, and it looks violent to stay as long.
It is violent.
How long? I mean, if you know you're going to be performing CPR, do you like preset? I don't know how the thing works. Do you preset it up in case you need it? You just hit a button and get to the safe room, or are you doing it just from the jump and you've trained so much that it takes you 20 seconds to set it up?
The theory behind using the machine is that it should take no more than about 20 to 30 seconds to set up the thing. When we're under that kind of pressure, it seems to work even faster for some reason.
Yeah.
And when you think you've got a missile flying in over your head, you kind of rush things a little bit more. But it wasn't set up from the outset. It was,
Okay.
we had it with us. We have the equipment with us. It's not a piece of equipment that we use routinely. We don't normally do CPR using it unless there are very specific sort of developments. If we're going to convey the patient whilst they're having CPR, then we'll use this machine. But if we're just doing CPR in house or wherever it is, we're still doing it the old-fashioned way, hands only.
Are there any other policy or protocol changes that take effect? So, for example, here in the U.S., if we have a large region size, like a major earthquake, then we have something called austere protocols where we can do things a little bit differently. When these alarms go off, does it change any of your patient care? Are there any things that you don't have to do because they're time-consuming or dangerous during an attack?
Things that change. I mean, one of the things that we have here that I've not seen anywhere else in the world is that we have youth volunteers on the ambulances. So kids aged 15 to 18. So anytime that there is any sort of escalation, again, they will not be allowed on the ambulances. As far as our protocols are concerned, it doesn't really change the protocols. What actually happens is that a lot more of the ambulances are then out and about, manned by whether it's volunteers or whether it's employees working overtime. All of the reserve vehicles are out on the road as well.
Okay. So you just kind of flood the system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you're, it's such a crazy thing for us in the States to think about the level of violence and war that you deal with. The U.S. has been in a ton of wars. Not a whole lot of them here, though, in many, many moons. How do you balance patient care and your duty to them with your own personal safety?
It's a tough balance. It's actually, I think the difficulties are more how do I balance it with what my family are going through at home. When I'm hearing the sirens go off or an air raid siren go off and I'm on my way to a call, it means my wife and kids are hiding in the safe room. Ironically, the safe room in our house is my boys' room, which is the only room that looks like a bomb's already hit it. Anyway, so I think we find that a lot more difficult. I think the difficulty we have as crews on the road is actually worrying about families rather than worrying about ourselves. I think you guys can probably have the same sort of thing, that you are concerned about your own personal safety, but we tend to think a lot more about others than we do about ourselves. We just have a job to do, and we're out there to do it.
Yeah, I totally understand that, but we don't have that level of concern. I mean, I can't imagine the additional stress that puts you on a day-to-day basis.
First of all, luckily it's not day to day. These escalations, when they happen, yes, they are frightening, but life goes on here pretty much as normal for most of the time. When it happens, it's unpleasant and it's difficult to cope with sometimes. But again, it's the job we've chosen to do, and much the same as, I guess, someone being in the military or someone being law enforcement, whatever it is, you're running into the danger zone sometimes. Yeah. And it's a risk we understand that we have to take. Obviously, we try to reduce those risks as much as we possibly can.
And how often are these?
Not always possible.
How often are these kinds of things occurring?
The escalations.
The escalations. Ballpark.
Every couple of years, sometimes a couple of times a year. There's a couple of days of sort of heated backwards and forwards. The last time we had sort of a really major escalation was about 3 years ago. Prior to this, the last few days that it happened. Can't really put a figure on it. I think it depends on what's going on the political side on both sides of the border. Tends to kick things off sometimes.
You talked about the junior volunteers, the 15 to 18-year-olds. Now, in Israel, there is compulsory service in the military. That's still a thing, right?
Right. Yep.
Is this experience for them kind of an introduction, a pre-training to perhaps the route they would take in the Israeli military?
So a lot of the kids who come through Magen David Adom, which is the national EMS organization that I work for, a lot of them end up either volunteering from many years later within MDA. Several of them end up doing paramedic courses prior to the army, or as part of their army service, and then serve as combat medics. The army started they kind of flooded their system almost with paramedics, using them almost as a replacement for doctors, so sort of high-level emergency frontline care, using MDA as their background, and that's where they start off. A lot of them start off as youth volunteers, and then go on in their army service to do either as EMTs or as paramedics, or all sorts of different roles that they've developed over the years.
Wow. And the compulsory service is 2 years, or is it longer?
It's about 2.5 years, 2 years and 8 months.
I can't. Only thing I think about when I think of that is Gal Gadot.
Yeah. And all I can think about is he keeps going back to making a joke about his kid's room being the bomb room.
Yeah, that just goes to show that our senses of humor run from
it's worldwide.
One side of the world to the other.
One paramedic, you've met them all. But
Absolutely.
I wonder if the folks here in the States can really get through their heads the way that your community, your society, your home has had to design these safety devices. So you can't just put up an apartment building or a hotel. You have to add these specific rooms in there because every couple years somebody crazy, does something. Right. That's not permeating my brain hole right now. I cannot imagine how you live that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really can't.
It's a different way of life, but it's kind of something that we've got used to. This country's had bomb shelters since
inception.
Since
the state was born back in 1948.
Yeah.
It's just part of what it is. It's what happens when you live in a region that's a very, very volatile region. Again, the states have got soldiers all over the world, but we're defending our own borders. So it's a very different.
So let me ask you this.
Way of life, different understanding.
When you leave the region, say you go on vacation, you go on holiday, and you go to the hotel, and there's no bomb-safe room, do you get a little nervous, or do you realize, this is how the rest of the world lives?
So back many, many years ago, when I was doing my compulsory service, I actually had a break in the middle of my compulsory service, and I went back to visit my family who lived in England. And I was on a bus with my brother, and I got off the bus, and we started walking down the street, and I said to my brother, hang on, wait here a second, ran back to the bus, banged on the door of the bus, and the driver's looking at me as if I'm nuts. Like, what have you forgotten? And I thought I left my assault rifle on there. Now people don't walk around London with assault rifles. So it kind of becomes part of life, I guess. But yeah, I guess when we head overseas, it's quite nice not to have to look for bomb shelters and things such like. But it's just who we are and what it is.
Wow. So another question for you, and if you don't mind getting personal and kind of opening yourself up to this, there's a very specific set of religious beliefs in your area of the world, if I can say that as cautiously as possible. Yeah, you're aware.
Yeah.
And one of those involves a very strict day of rest, correct?
Right.
Right. So I understand there are exemptions. Can you talk to our audience a little bit about how it is that you balance faith with duty, or is that worked into your schedule?
You're not going to offend me. You can say Sabbath. It's cool.
Hey, I don't know these things. Is that a Game of Thrones thing?
Very, very difficult to offend me. You'd have to work very hard at it. So the rules are that the Saturday is the Sabbath. From the way the Jewish day works, from evening to evening. So from Friday evening until Saturday evening, which is why I made your life a little bit difficult about not being able to do the call on Friday.
Yeah, you did.
Because when you said to me the 31st of March, that worked in my brain. That was just a date, and it was fine. And I checked my schedule and then went, oh, it's Friday. So, so from Friday evening until Saturday night is the Sabbath, or Shabbat as it's known here. And if you are a religious Jew, then yeah, there's a lot of restrictions on what you can, what you can't do. So in theory, work is prohibited. We don't drive. We don't use electricity, or we have like preset, so the lights will be on in the house, or there'll be like a time switch that we can use. Food is pre-prepared before Shabbat comes in. But as far as emergency services, there is a if you want to call it a bypass rule. So anything that's involved with the saving of life or the potential saving of life, we can go. We can attend, we can do whatever needs doing. So for example, if I work on a Shabbat, which I do on a fairly regular basis, at least 2 or 3 times a month, then I will drive to work, and I will obviously drive the ambulance at work, whatever it is, treat the patients, do whatever needs doing, but then I won't sit on the station and play on the computer or play on my phone or watch television or whatever it is, or even make a coffee. I'll bring coffee with me kind of pre-prepared. So whatever needs to be done for the patient's benefit is absolutely permitted, and so we can do it. Anything that's beyond that and comes under the boundaries of what we're not supposed to be doing on Shabbat, so we avoid doing.
How did that come up? Because ambulances aren't in the Torah. How did that get decided?
The concept of life-saving does appear in the Torah. True. With development of time, so you take that to whatever it means nowadays. So 1,000 years ago, I guess if you saw a house on fire, you could pull people out of it, even though putting out a fire in theory on Shabbat is not allowed. If there is a life, limb, whatever else at risk, then obviously you can do that. So that was 1,000 years ago, and nowadays it means yes, you can drive if you need to. Again, I won't be driving around just for the fun of driving the ambulance. We'll go to the call, we'll attend the call, we'll take the patient to hospital, we'll come back to the station. Do whatever is absolutely necessary, and then try to rest on the in-betweens.
And what does rest involve? Are you meditating? Are you reading the Torah? What does that involve?
Sitting in a corner with your eyes closed?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah. Any and all of the above.
Any combination.
I think the main ideal behind Shabbat is to take time away from the real world. The crazy world, and
that's a better way to put it.
Yeah. Spend time with your family, spend time with your friends, spend time away from the actual physical act of work. So I mean, if I was a lawyer or an accountant, like I should have been, being a good Jewish boy, then these are jobs I wouldn't have done on Shabbat. But the job I chose to do, I realized that it involved having to work on Shabbat. And when patients ask me the same question, and if we go to patients who see the kippah on my head and they say, how can you as a religious guy be working on Shabbat? I said, because you're sick on Shabbat. And that's just the way it is. The job has to be done. So that's what we do.
Wow. That's a fascinating, your existence. It baffles me. Truly, I don't have words to
To
I
be
think
able
it's
to be able
incredible.
to balance your faith and the tenets of your faith along with the needs of your community. That is something that I think a lot of at least folks in the U.S. Now we do have the Hatzola ambulance services in some of the more observant communities where traditional EMS is not allowed to enter the community or the house. They have to wait for the Hatzola, which is the specific the ones that can actually follow the tenets of what can and can't be done.
I've never heard of that.
You've never heard of that?
Never.
Yeah, they've got it.
I've not heard of the fact that Hatsalo have to be there first. I wasn't aware of that.
There are some communities, and Mark Glencore's talked about this up where he is in Newcastle, and we've also got some over on the East Coast. I want to say New York, Pennsylvania. There are some very.
I was going to credit you with just making stuff up because I've literally never heard that term before.
So it's
ever.
It's an ambulance service that follows the same tenets that Aryeh has been talking about, and can make sure that things aren't done to the patient that exceed what can be done under their religious tenets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Otherwise,
All
you just got you got me coming in and going, well, I'm going to give you this, and they're going, whoa, no, you can't. And we do encounter other religious groups, especially as patients, where it's no, you can't use this medicine on me, you can't use that medicine on me because of my belief, and I'm okay with that. So just listening to the way that you're able to balance all these things, and there's rockets, and your kid lives in a bomb room.
Yeah, good Lord.
Hats off to you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
And I wish
and your coworkers.
I wish more of the world would look at Judaism and the simple I'm not saying convert. I'm saying look at the simple concept of Shabbat and what a day of rest can mean for everybody else in your life, and how it can improve your perspective. I think it's awesome.
Unless there's rockets.
Unless there's rockets, yeah.
Unless there's rockets, then it's a different question.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to say they're going to allow you to walk to the bomb room.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's one of the exemptions, right? You can remove yourself from harm.
Yeah.
I think that's probably allowed.
I hope so. So let me ask you this: in this community that you're in, with this constant threat of trauma, do you think that has made you a better paramedic overall, or is it just that's how it is?
I think it's made us more aware of the possibility of things like major incidents, for example, multi-casualty incidents. They're things that we've had too much practice on, and therefore have kind of become almost world experts on it. And it's one of the things that MDA representatives actually spend a lot of time going around the world doing various training sessions. We've started doing them in Jewish communities with various other EMS organizations, all sorts of things all over the world, taking this mass casualty, can't think of the word, the fact that we've done it so much, and again, being able to teach that due to having so much experience at it. Does it make me a better paramedic? Don't know. I see things here now. I mean, I worked in England. I worked in London for 10 years as a paramedic and saw things in England that I haven't seen here in the 6 or 7 years that I've now been working here. And vice versa. I think having a little bit of world experience has definitely made me a better paramedic. It's given me insight into different protocols, into different guidelines, into different faiths, communities, practices, all sorts of things. That's definitely helped. Again, it's wherever you go, I guess it's going to be a different experience. I can only presume that working at an airport is very different. Again.
Yeah, and I think that's a great takeaway for our audience, and I'm glad you mentioned it, is getting a better worldview, seeking out people that are different from you and trying to just find out how it is they live their lives, especially if they're in the disciplines. If you're a police officer and you go to England or Israel, and not just seek out somebody on the street and, hey, how you doing, but try to learn how it is that they balance their life, their faith, and their job.
How does you in that area do your job?
Exactly. And it's the same, but it's completely different. I think we can
Totally.
all agree.
Yep.
Right? There's still going to be that patient with the chest pain that doesn't want to go to the hospital. It's just going to be for different reasons in a different language.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What can I tell? We've all got the same terrible black humor.
Oh,
Yes.
that's absolutely true.
I think that was made very clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Aryeh, thank you so much for coming on What's Your Emergency Radio. We wish you the best. Thanks again for taking time. And
cheers, man.
Be safe out there, man. Take care of everybody.
Yeah, wear those helmets.
Yeah, keep those helmets and jackets on, huh?
This one.
I don't think that's going to help when the
You'll appreciate this. There you go. There's the keep I'm wearing for work today.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, it's funny. I was actually going to ask, can you have custom?
Yeah.
What did you call it?
Kippah. Kippah is the Hebrew word yarmulke.
There you go. Okay.
For,
I don't know if you know this. I don't speak Hebrew.
For those of you on the radio not watching our YouTube channel, it's actually got a nice little EKG strip all the way around.
Yeah,
the edge
that's awesome. I
of
think
the
that's so
outcome.
cool.
Very nice. Being able to personalize that and make it your own. You know, I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Pleasure
Be
talking to
safe.
you both.
Cheers.
All
man.
right.
Be safe.
Take care. See you soon. Bye.